This is Mitch, and welcome to the 1000houses.com podcast. It is sponsored by taxfreefuture.com. If you do not have a tax deferred or tax-free retirement plan or an account to grow your finances, tax deferred or tax-free, you have no idea the huge tool that you are missing in your tool belt. Please go to taxfreefuture.com. Check out the 37 little video vignettes. They are done by yours truly and Tim Berry, the expert attorney that has been dealing with retirement plan loss for over 2 decades. And this is a man who doesn't say, no, 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 no. They say, well, we can do it if, and he'll figure a way out if there's any way to figure anything out. And he'll help you with all the good parts. And if you've done prohibitive transactions or something you think might be prohibitive, then he'll talk to you about how to undo them or how to proceed the best way forward. But man, you will not believe what your financial advisors are not telling you. We're going to tell you what they're not telling you. We're going to tell you why they're not telling you. And then you can do with it what you want, but you'll be amazed. My favorite part is how you take little bits of money that you can put into these accounts and grow them into large amounts of money in a relatively short period of time, especially if you're savvy and you're into it. And how do you get savvy? You watch those 37 little video vignettes and learn all that you can do. Taxfreefuture.com. Thank you so much for being our sponsor because you are helping so many people. All right, William, I got the bills paid here. So how are you doing today?
We're doing great here today, Mitch. How about you?
I understand that you are now in love in Colorado Springs, and she moved you from Belize. What a woman she must be to move you from Belize.
She's great.
Well, congratulations. And tell us, I'm curious about Belize. Why'd you go there, and what was it like when you were there? Because I think all of us investors have this fantasy that we're going to go offshore somewhere and never pay taxes again and live in paradise for a couple $100s a month. So what really happened?
Well, it's not really like that. Actually, the reason I decided to leave, I just needed a change. I was almost 50 years old. I just got a divorce after a 20-year marriage, and I mean it's really just a cliche, but it was a rough divorce. I lost almost everything that I had, and I just needed something different. And I had vacation. We vacationed a lot. We'd been investing at that time for over 10 years. And had done really well and had traveled a lot of places. And when we traveled, we didn't go a week at a time. We went for a month or 2 months. And we'd spent 6 weeks in Belize before, and I really liked it. And I said, you know what? I'm almost broke. I can live on not a whole lot there. I really liked it. I love the beach, and I need a change. So really, that's the reason that I decided to go.
Well, so they treat you good down there?
They're great. I actually chose Belize for a lot of reasons. Like I said, it's a beautiful country. The people, English is the first language. Like I said, it's a relatively low cost to live. You can live very nicely, right close to the beach. Like I said, lobster dinner, $20. I mean, all fresh stuff. And they're great. They're really friendly. If you've traveled much, you can go a lot of places, and Americans these days aren't the most welcome, but they want you there. They actually have a program that caters to expats. They want you to come down. They want you to live there. They want you to bring your money to Belize. So it works out real well.
So just real quick, we're going to be talking about Sub2 here, but tell us a little bit about that program. You said an acronym, and tell us what that is.
Yeah, the QRP program, it's Qualified Retired Persons Program. They have a minimum age requirement. You have to be 40 years old, and it's a couple $1,000 to get into the program. You can bring all of your stuff in. If you're a minimalist, you've just got furniture, you're broke, you're okay. But if you've got planes, boats, big toys, all of those things get to come in duty free. You get permanent residency there, and you don't have to worry about going into the capital city and renewing paperwork and doing stuff like that. You get to live there. You don't have to pay any taxes if you don't do business in the country. And I mean, it's just a really great program. And really all you have to provide for them is a doctor's statement, that you're relatively healthy, and a police background report that they'll let you bring in yourself. They don't even run it on you themselves. So I mean, it's just really simple. They want you to live there. They want you to move there. So yeah, that's the program. You can just Google QRP Belize QRP program and learn all about it.
QRP Belize. All right, good. Well, we'll go ahead and put that in the show notes too. We're going to have some. We'll be driving. We'll be putting a lot of things over in the show notes over at 1000houses.com/sub2. That's SUB and the number 2. All right. So tell us a little bit about your real estate background and how you found real estate.
Well, I'll tell you, Mitch, I didn't know a thing about real estate. You know, I had bought, actually, at the time I got started investing, I had owned 2 homes and bought those pretty much like anybody else does. I went to the attorney's office, signed a bunch of papers, and had a house and a mortgage. But I was in the restaurant business. You know, my background on me, I left home when I was 15, quit school in the 9th grade, and just worked really hard. I had to survive. I've been in the restaurant industry for over 20 years, and you know, found myself closing in on, you know, late 30s, and you know, worked 70 hours a week, made a pretty good income, but I never saw my family. I was married, had 2 kids, and a lot of times I would leave the house in the morning before they would get out of bed, and I wouldn't get home until after they were in bed at night. So I was pretty much disgusted with my life. Just because I didn't have much of one. And I did like a lot of people. I was up at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, just watching TV and frustrated, and good old Carlton Sheets infomercial came on, and, you know, picked up the phone and ordered it. And, you know, the rest, as they say, is history. I mean, at the time the internet, you know, was getting started, it wasn't as big. And I lived, you know, I'd been transferred. I was actually in Georgia at the time, so I wasn't surrounded by family saying, oh, that stuff won't work. So I just opened the book, read it, which is what, you know, 95% of the people that order it don't do, and just did what he said. And a month later, I bought 2 houses, and I said, hey, this isn't too tough. So that's how I got going.
Very common theme here. One I want to point out, and I'm an advocate for those who aren't traditional school educated material, you know, and I was not either. You obviously weren't. You don't have to have formal school to be a success. In fact, if you read books like Think and Grow Rich, a lot of the world's biggest millionaires and some of the most successful people never made it through school. Certainly not through college. Some of them didn't even get to high school. You didn't make it very far through high school, and it may be their greatest blessing, because you're thrown out to the street to figure out how to survive. And one thing that's really cool is this thing called the human body. It likes to eat, and it's going to figure out a way. It's going to figure it out. You back this set of organs up into the corner somewhere, and it's gonna fight. And as long as it gets enough water and enough protein, and as long as you can keep your senses, you know, this body's going to figure out what to do to get what it needs, if you'll apply yourself. Other thing I wanted to point out is, and I'm sure you'll agree, your education didn't stop just because you didn't go to formal school, did it?
Oh, well, absolutely not. I mean, it has to continue. You when you live out, you know, on the streets, I mean, you have to learn and have to adapt for sure.
Yeah, the old Marine, my dad was a Marine, which, you know, they're never not a Marine after they're a Marine. So, you know, adapt and overcome. That's, you know, so that's what we do. I did the same thing, by the way. I ordered the Carlton Sheets program too. One of the starts to my life, a big impact. And all those things do work, but you got to work them. They don't work. They don't work because you ordered them. You know,
that's true.
they work because you read them and you did something about it, right? So that's what we're here to talk about today. You specialize in Sub2. How did you morph? I mean, I'm sure you didn't start with Sub2, but I'm just guessing, but I'm sure you didn't start with that, because none of us ever start with what we end up doing. And that was a quote from Ken D'Angelo, who started Homevestors. We were at a Christmas meeting one time, and he lived here in San Antonio, and we would always find our way in the back parlor there by the fireplace with a glass of cognac or something, talking about real estate from 9 a.m. where the party started till 3 in the morning. And one of the things he said to me is, an entrepreneur rarely ends up with the business he decided to start. It always morphs and adapts and changes until you find the least path of resistance to the most money. And it's hardly ever what you started.
Yeah, I agree. And I know when I got started, you know, I got online and of course had the Carlton Sheets course. And if you've used it too, so you know, I mean, he covers pretty much every way of investing. And so it's a lot of information. So I looked at all of it. You know, do you want to be a landlord? Do you want to do this, do that? And I ordered all the courses too. I mean, once I discovered real estate, and there were a million, you're talking about the very late 90s, early 2000s, and there were a ton of gurus and courses, and I ordered them all: lease options, wholesaling, rehabbing, I mean, the whole bit, trying to find what it was that I wanted to do. But what I really narrowed things down to was that I didn't want to be a typical landlord. And I wanted cash flow. I didn't want to wholesale. I didn't want to have to keep working. And wholesaling kind of seemed like a job to me. So I wanted a combination of those things. So my business over the years turned into a system of just buying houses and then selling them with seller financing and creating the upfront money, the chunk of money, if you will, like you would get from a wholesale deal, the monthly cash flow that you would get from a rental or a lease option or something along those lines. And of course, the back end, secondary, you know, chunk of cash you'll get when they refinance. And that's kind of how I got from A to B. Yeah.
So as you may or may not know, I don't know, because sometimes I know us as a group, you know, the AAA educators / doers. You may have or may not have time to have researched who you're talking to. So this is what I'm about to tell you in $7 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks, okay? But I bought a house about every 4 to 5 days in or about San Antonio for over 2.5 decades. And my MO is to buy them with other people's money. And that money allows me to wrap the mortgage so I can sell it on payments and not have to pay off my debtor. And I buy about 100 houses a year consistently for over 20 years. And I sell my houses on 30-year fixed notes, where how I came to the conclusion is exactly what you're saying, right? Right. You're picking up in the down payment, and I'm picking up in the down payment about what a wholesaler makes. And this is what's going to make wholesalers sick to their stomach, is that the wholesaler's done at that point, right? They picked up your 8,000, 10,000, 12,000, 4,000, whatever it is. They picked it up and it's over. And William Tingle and I are still owed, you know, $180,000 of positive cash flow over the next 30 years or 25 years or whatever, anywhere from 150 to 250,000. We're still owed that. And that's what every wholesaler in the planet is leaving on the table, because they haven't figured out a system where they can buy as many houses as they want and live off down payments and just start stacking up, you know, the cash flow, the positive cash flow. So when someone like William or myself says we are, and you know, again, don't look at this like trying to impress anybody, just trying to impress upon you that every time I do a deal, my net worth goes up 180,000. I'm owed 180,000. You know, you do 5 deals like that, you know, that's another $1 million in your net worth category. So when someone says they're a multi on and on millionaire, it's not that hard if you pick the right strategies, right? Right. Because every time you make a deal, you're picking up enough to live on, hopefully, you know, or do 1 or 2, and that's enough to live on. And then you really don't have to spend the cash flow per se, because it's just all extra. So it doesn't take long to build up a really big financial. Now I borrow private people's money, but you know, there's another way to do it, and it's just go around picking up mortgages that people can't afford or don't want anymore. So talk to us about a basic Sub2 deal.
Well, actually, that was, you know, going back to how I got started. What really made me pick up on Sub2 was, you know, when I got started, I didn't have any money. I mean, I made a decent income, but I had a wife and 2 kids. we got a new car every couple of years. We had a decent house. And we just did the things day to day that most people do. You make your money, you spend it. And so, but I had good credit, so I was able to walk in a couple of local banks and get little lines of credit and let them finance, the first couple of houses for me that I did. But what I discovered, after that fourth, fifth, sixth house was there's something that banks refer to as exposure. And when they start talking to you about that and they say, well, we've got a lot of exposure with you, we're probably not going to be able to continue lending to you and that sort of thing. And what I realized was if I need cash flow that's going to pay me enough money to have the kind of lifestyle that I want, the banks probably aren't going to be able to do it for me. So I've got to find another way. Went through the sandwich lease option thing and didn't really like that. It just seemed like a really vulnerable position to be between a seller and an end buyer. Did a few of those. And then I discovered Sub2 and I said, well, gee, if I can take over payments on loans that are already existing, already fixed, full terms, gosh, I can buy as many as I want. So that's what we started doing. We would look for people in situations, and most of them are going to be in some kind of distress, whether that's a divorce or a pending foreclosure or a move that they have to make suddenly. But probably 25% of the houses we buy aren't typically distressed people. They're people, they have a motivation to sell the house, but they're not under the gun, so to speak. But so that's what we started doing. We started taking over payments on existing financing.
Yeah. Okay. So give us a case study of a lucrative Sub2 deal that you've done recently.
Okay. Probably, let's see. We had one deal that we did this was a few months ago. This person actually called us on a bandit sign. This lady, her husband had died in a car accident, and they lived away from her family. Her family lived in South Dakota, and this house was actually in Iowa. And she wanted to move herself and her children back to South Dakota. They had refinanced the house a couple of years ago when her husband had started a business, and she saw our bandit sign and she gave us a call and she said, listen, I'm moving. I don't want to deal with agents. I don't want people walking through the house. I've just been through this with my husband, and we really just want to sell the house. The numbers on that, if I remember those correctly, this was probably a $250,000 house. They owed probably $220,000, $230,000. So there wasn't a tremendous amount of equity. And after she'd sold with an agent, there really wouldn't be anything for her to get. The interest rate was probably in the 3.5% range. And she just signed the house over to us. We were able to coordinate a move date with her that worked for when she wanted to go. That's one of the great things about what we do. There's no pressure to close a loan and get things done. So she told us the date she wanted to move. We came in, took over payments on a current loan. Our payments were probably in the $1,200 range. We turned around and sold that house that was worth $250,000 for probably $259,000. A lot of people I see teach, mark the house up to whatever price. People won't care, and it's owner financing. We try to keep that thing really close to market value. We're not trying to rip off our end buyers. We want to sell them a good house at a fair price. We sold that house, I believe, for $259,000 at probably in the 6% range, where we'd collect about a $500 a month cash flow. Now, over the life of that, our average buyer will cash us out in around 3 years. We work with our buyers to improve their credit to the point where they can get new financing. So we collected a 10% down payment on a $250,000 house, so $25,000 down. We'll collect $500 a month in cash flow for 3 years, which will work out to about $18,000. And then by the end of that time, we'll probably have another $15,000 or so on the back end. So we're looking at probably $50,000 on a house really with no equity. And you can buy as many of those as you want because people have no equity. So that's I think some people call them skinny deals, but that's probably the typical deal that we'll do with $50,000 to $60,000 in profit over 3 years.
I think Ron LeGrand calls it the pretty house deal. I'm not sure. And they don't have a lot of equity. So So the number that, so let's talk about the objective. So we talked about the upside. You got 25,000 down. You collected about $18,000 in positive cash flow within 2 or 3 years when they're supposed to refinance you out. They refinance you out and you get another lump sum, another 15,000. So like you said, uh, 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 over $50,000 in profit on a house that doesn't seem to have any real equity in it, which is great. And one of the keys here, I saw you picked up this loan. It was at 3%.
Mm-hmm.
It's a killer loan. It really doesn't matter how many years it had left on it, because in your case, you're asking or demanding that people refi you out within a certain amount of time. Is there a time limit? Do you always give a time limit, or is it just how it works out?
We don't give a time limit to our buyers, Mitch. Like I said, we try to create a great situation for our buyer. We don't mark the house up tremendously. I mean, typically a markup for us is going to be 5% or less. We're not some of those investors that'll say market up 20%. The market will take care of it. You can't count on that. And we really want these guys to be able to refi. We don't put a balloon in our notes. There are people that'll debate that, whether or not you can do it, whether you have to be Dodd-Frank compliant or not. And there's 1,000 arguments that could do 100 podcasts for you probably just on Dodd-Frank. But we don't put a balloon in because honestly, we don't care if they refinance. That's our goal. But if they want to pay us, for the next, 30, 40 years, we set our notes up on a 40-year amortization. And it makes the payment a little bit lower, but it also really increases the back end for us as far as profit goes.
So let's talk about that a second. Yeah. I do 30-year fixed notes. You're doing 40-year fixed notes. Is there a maximum by law? I think there is. Is 40 years about as long as you can go?
I got to tell you, and I've gotten in arguments with people about this too, about, again, going back to Dodd-Frank. Everybody thinks Dodd-Frank has a bunch of, and I guess in some ways it may have limitations. Term on a mortgage is not one of them. So I haven't found anything that says there's a limit on how long you can amortize a mortgage. I haven't found it, and it may exist, but like I said, I haven't found it. So
it may be a state by state thing too.
Yeah.
So always make sure you study your state statutes and everything when you're doing this stuff, just to make sure.
Absolutely.
And just so we have the disclaimer in here for both of us, neither one of us are attorneys and we're not giving legal advice. We're just saying what we do and how we've done for many, many years and many, many deals, for better or for worse. Okay. So seek your own legal counsel on these things. We're giving you kind of a 10,000 foot overview right now. There's no way to spend the time it would take to tell you every single facet, upside and downside of these deals, but we'll give you a good overview. So the big fear, excuse me, the big fear is that the notes that you're taking over, you're taking them sub-2 an existing loan. It's, the days of assumable notes are probably long gone. I don't know if there's any that even exist anymore. So you're taking them knowing that, a bank has the right to call the note due probably or not. What's your take on this?
Well, yeah, the due on sale clause exists, and of course it's in virtually every mortgage that's out there now, and that's a big question. Actually, interestingly enough, the question is mostly with investors. You'll hear it occasionally from a seller about, well, can we really do this, and is it against the law? Well, absolutely, it's not against the law. Now, is there a due on sale clause? Yes. And what the due on sale clause basically says, and if you read one, it's really pretty telling. It says the bank has the right at their option, and that's actually in the due on sale clause, at their option. It doesn't say they definitely will if they find out there's been a transfer. It doesn't say anything other than at their option they can do it. I've been doing this since 1999, so I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I've taken loans from small banks, big banks, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, you name it. And I have never, ever had one single bank mention due on sale. Does that mean it won't happen? Well, absolutely not. I know that I actually, in my group on Facebook, I put out a call several months ago and said, investors, if you've ever had a loan call due, if you know of anyone who's ever had a loan call due, please send me an email, contact me. I want to talk to you about it. And I had a couple of people message me saying that they knew a cousin or a friend of a friend of a friend who had one happen. But in all the, in the contacts that I got, I only had a couple that may have even come close to sounding reputable, and only one person that came forward with an actual story where it happened to them. I know, of course, hundreds of investors across the country over 20 years, most of them very experienced, who say the same thing. So can it happen? Absolutely. It is a risk and you need to be aware of it. How often does it happen? I can't find very many cases of it. My experience tells me that most banks want their money. And if you'll call them up and say, hey, I'm here talking to Joe and I'm going to help him get his finances together. We're going to start making sure this payment comes in each and every month. Is that okay with you? They go, send us the money. So that's
they have enough problems. They have enough people that aren't paying them that they need to deal with and charge off and all that. They don't want another one. I mean, yeah. You know, there's a saying down here in Texas, man, just don't kick a sleeping dog. He's asleep, just walk by him. You know, he can't bite you while he's asleep. Just leave him asleep. And the other thing is, you know, make your damn payments. You know, no one wants to mess with an income stream that's fine. When it's going along, no one who wants to mess with that. It's a perfectly good loan. And they don't want to kick a sleeping dog either. You know what I mean? They got payments coming in. They're going to come over here and mess with you now. Now they're going to have another house maybe on their upside down list. So I believe in that wholeheartedly. I have found though, the other problem that worries me a little bit, and you can deal with it. There's no doubt you can deal with it, but you need to be ready to deal with it. Don't let it surprise you. Have you had this happen to you? Because I have had this happen to me. The person who I have saved their ass because I got them caught up and I got their thing, they're all fine for a couple of years, and then they find a new wife and a new life, and then they want their VA loan back because they can only get one of them, or they want their, you know, their FHA homestead loan back because they can only get one of them. And they're the ones that have caused me the problems, not the bank. It's the person that says, I want you to pay this off, and I'm going to give you trouble if you don't pay it off. And then they start calling my bank. And so in my defense, tell me if I did this right or if there's other ways to approach it. I just got with an attorney I just made it ironclad and actually got these people to sign that, you know, you'll be tortiously interfering with my contract if you ever talk to anybody about what we're doing.
Yeah, that's right. And we have had a couple of instances over the years where the sellers have come back saying, hey, when is this thing going to get paid off and that sort of thing. It's really only happened a couple of times. And we just have so many disclosures that they sign, numerous disclosures that just like what you said, hey, listen, you know, we're taking over payments on this financing. You know, you're not to contact the bank about it. We'll take care of those things. And that they understand repeatedly that there's no guarantee on when it'll be paid off. We do guarantee to make on-time payments each and every month until the loan is either refinanced or fully amortized. And then when they come back, we remind them of those things, and it's always worked out. But you know, I've heard of other cases where people have gone to the extreme and contacted the bank and done those things. But again, even in those cases, I've never heard of a loan call due. The bank generally says, hey, they're making the payments. We're okay with that.
Yes. And so, you know, as I mentioned before the call, like, I think our commitment here on 1000houses.com podcast is to tell you the upsides and the downsides, not just the upside. You know, that's one of the reasons I wrote my first book, My Life in 1,000 Houses, Failing Forward to Financial Freedom. Was I went to those seminars and they showed me these big checks and they told me all this wonderful stuff. And then when I got in the business, they didn't tell me about some other crap. And you know, like, why didn't you tell me about this crap? Because at least if I'd have known, I could have been prepared, or I would have done things different. But you never told me about this, you know. So we're here to tell you. And while we're on the subject, I had a very intelligent attorney that had specialized in Sub2 contracts, and he did something that was clever, which I used throughout all my different strategies. Was, you know, you can write a contract that's 9 or 10 or 15 pages long, and you can cover all the aspects. And they sign at the bottom. This guy did it a little bit different, and I really liked it. When you have super poignant points, he would put that paragraph on a piece of paper by itself, you know, and they signed that one paragraph by itself. And he would have like 10 of those, especially in the Sub2 thing, you know, 10 major things. You do understand this loan could be called by a bank. So that if it ever got to like a trial by jury or a trial or was out in front of a judge, you know, people would say, well, you know, you hand this big contract and say, well, my client was unsophisticated and was ill-equipped mentally to handle the size and the girth of this legalese. But the way this attorney did it was he just said, so you didn't understand this paragraph? Let's read it. And there's your signature. And it's just, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 sentences like in plain English. And you didn't understand that? You're not equipped to understand this. And then you go, in this sentence right here, you didn't understand this paragraph because you signed it and you dated it, and it's only 4 sentences. What is it you didn't understand? You know, so he was preparing to go to court so that it was just really hard for someone to say, well, I didn't know, or they put it in the fine print, or they didn't explain it to me. So I have used that in my other contracts and my other strategies too, when there was extremely poignant points that I wanted to make sure that no one could be misconstrued, that they weren't told. I would put that paragraph or that sentence or that couple of paragraphs on a separate page by itself and include it in the contract. So that's just a tidbit for anyone out there if you think that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It's like I said, we just have them sign so many disclosures that all basically say the same thing. It's just worded a little bit different. So exactly for the points you're talking about, and what's that quote? If you want peace, prepare for war. And so that attorney's exactly right. So,
was that The Art of War?
It is. It is.
If you haven't read that book, read it. A lot of it was kind of over my head at the time I read it, but one of the main things I learned from that book, The Art of War, is knowledge is power, and you don't exactly go around telling everything you know. For example, you know, if a spy comes into your camp and you pick him off as a spy, you don't run around town with the guy, you know, let's hang him, he's a spy. You know he's a spy. Don't tell him you know he's a spy. Then send him home with very bad information so you can win the war. You know what I mean? So like, play your cards a little closer to your chest sometimes, you know? Yeah,
you don't have to tell people everything you know.
I knew contractors that were getting to me. And I paid them and I didn't let them know. And I was able to turn this all the way around to my advantage because they never knew that I knew that what they were doing, that I knew exactly what they were doing. And I was able to turn it into a very, very big plus. And they still don't know to this day. Unless they read my book, they might have figured out who they are. But, you know, cons don't really read books. So we don't have to worry about that. So how do you find Sub2 deals? You know, nothing happens without a deal. So how are you mining for these?
Well, you know, and that's the question you get a lot. How do you find Sub2 deals? But the truth is, what we do is we market for sellers, and their situation and their financing turns a potential deal into a Sub2 deal. Now, there are some suspects that are more likely to be Sub2s. For example, I was talking to a student yesterday. We were talking about the dream list of potential Sub2s, which what we determined yesterday would be VA loans on vacant properties that were 30, 60, or 90 days late. So, you know, that type of situation. But marketing, typically for us, my favorites have always been pre-foreclosures and that sort of thing. Now, yeah, I told you I recently moved to Colorado Springs, which this appears, in addition to being a super hot market where most properties only stay on the market for a couple of weeks, a good market for VAs. So we're going to start looking at that sort of thing here too. But pre-foreclosures, people that have some kind of problem they need to sell, houses for sale that have relatively low equity, that are in very good condition, that type of thing. Those are actually our favorites right now.
Yeah. So when you know, people think that that you have to get a lawyer all the time to do all these things. When you do your stuff, you get a lawyer to look over your paperwork one time, like get it all set, and you have them go over it with a fine-tooth comb in the beginning. But after that, your documents are pretty much rinse and repeat. Is that correct, or do you?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. If you're going into a new market, or maybe you're a new investor and you bought a course, and this is something I tell people all the time. Well, if you buy a course, make sure you take those documents to the local attorney there, somebody that you're working with already, or somebody that's been recommended from your RIA. Have them go through all of those. Different states are going to require different things. Different states like Colorado, for example, California, they require specific disclosures when you're dealing with people in foreclosure and that sort of thing. So always have those done. But once you have a set of documents that have been blessed by a local attorney for the state, as far as what their requirements are, then you can just use those documents over and over and over. And we very rarely close a sub-2 buy with an attorney. It's just not necessary. A notary can take care of notarizing your deeds, your limited power of attorney, and any other documents that you have there that you want to have notarized. And then it's just as simple as taking your deed to the courthouse and getting it recorded.
Okay, I've also, in some cases it's more important than others, but there are people that say they just want to close at an attorney's office because it gives it more of an official closing. Then you can close at your own office, which would go a long ways if that office looks professional and is, has the oak cabinets or whatever and looks the part. And then there's people that close on the hood of their car or close at the local coffee shop. I've done it all ways. I close deals on the hood of my car forever. But I came to the conclusion that it really gives people some peace of mind, or maybe avoids some anxiety for people if you'll close in a professional atmosphere, whether it be your office or an attorney's office. How do you close?
Typically, we're just going to close with a mobile notary. When I lived out of the country, that's the way, like I said, it was done, 95, 99% of the time. We would send a mobile notary out to take care of all of those things to their house generally. You can usually get a feel. When I worked locally, we did almost all of our closings on the hood of a car or in a McDonald's. Or I used to have a lot of fun doing this. I had a banker. It was actually with BB&T, which was a regional bank at the time. That I used to, just like to tweak him a lot about, he used to joke with me about stealing houses. So I would take a lot of my sellers to his office. He was a notary. He was one of the bank officers. He had given me a pretty substantial line of credit by then, but I would take people in there and had to have him do the closing for me just so I could rub it in his face. Hey, yeah, we just bought this house down in blah, blah, blah. We just stole another house. I mean, literally, we'd leave there a lot of times. His mouth would just be hanging open. It was amazing. So yeah, you can close anywhere that you want to. You can get a feel from the seller generally if they're going to be more comfortable in an attorney's office or something like that. But that's really pretty rare. Most of the people I deal with just want to get it taken care of. And if you present yourself in a professional manner, you're confident, you know what you're doing, you're handling everything for them. Most of them just don't care.
And I think what you just said is really important. Go in there with the documents and put it all right in their face. The good parts, what might, it could, whatever the clauses are that you feel tentative that might, people think, man, if I show them this, it's a chance they're going to blow the deal. Hey, if it blows the deal, go find a different buyer because you're just looking for trouble. Get it out on the table right there, plain and simple. Goes straight to it. I had a guy one time taught me this lesson about showing houses. He says, you take the ugliest part of the house. If the double garage doors are caved in and there's broken windows, take them right to that first and say, look, these doors here are not looking very good. I've got the prices, you can fix them. You can pick any kind of door you want. You can get fancy doors. You can do the windows. Maybe you don't even want windows in it. Now's your chance to get these garage doors the way you want them. And sell over the hardest part first and just get it out of the way. And then move on to the rest of the pretty parts of the house. But go to the ugly first. And so I kind of use that in my life. Anything I was afraid of, I've learned to go right to it. Go right to it, get it right on the table, address it, get nose to nose with it. And then if you got a deal at the end of that, then you are probably going to have, I mean, the chances of having problems are very few because you were straightforward and told everyone just what you would want to know if you were on the other side of the table.
That's exactly right. You know, Mitch, I've been telling my students for years, don't be afraid of the hard questions. Part of what we do with our sellers, you know, we're taking over their financing. I mean, that's kind of a big deal. So establishing some rapport up front as quickly as you can is really important. But when your sellers ask you a tough question, just be honest. Don't try to dance around it and try ways to candy coat it. When a seller asks me, what's going to happen if you don't make these payments? I'll tell them, hey, if I don't make these payments, your credit is fried. You know, but listen, we don't make money until the completion really of this transaction. So we're going to carry it all the way through.
So I've had that, I've told that to people too. One of those pieces of paper, one of those one-offs where, you know, seller herein recognizes that he is facing imminent foreclosure without me or someone like me, this is not the exact wording, you know, taking over these payments, getting it caught up and trying to solve the situation, trying in big capital letters. Very well aware that these payments may get made forever and the note resolved the way it was supposed to, or it may go to foreclosure on another day. But either way, I'm postponing that day starting whenever these documents are signed, but it may not go. You may end up with a foreclosure on your process, on your deal. And I have them sign that just so like, you know, I'm going to do the very best I can for you, but right now you're headed to foreclosure.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. If someone gets foreclosed on a VA loan, can they ever get a VA loan again?
You know, I don't know, honestly, if they can never get one again or if it'd be difficult for them. I do know that if they're currently in the military and they have a VA foreclosure, it doesn't do a lot for their career. And that's one of the motivating factors for them.
Yeah, sometimes the higher ups will really get on a person in the military if they're not performing as per their word or their signature. So
yeah.
Do you have something to give away to our audience today? I didn't ask you before, so I hate to put you on the spot. You have anything we can give away to them or
Absolutely. They can actually go to your website at 1000houses.com/sub2. And I think the show notes will take them to a couple of free products they can get. Actually, we have a free real estate investors business plan. That's, you know, it's in Word format, and so it's easy to customize it for your business. It's actually the business plan that I used to get a couple of lines of credit when I got started. And then we also have a course for them on negotiation, how to talk to, you know, how to negotiate effectively with real estate sellers. They'll give them some tips on how to build rapport quickly and, you know, how to turn some leads into deeds. So they can get both of those at your website there in the show notes.
So yeah, real estate investors business plan and some information on how to turn leads into deeds.
That's right.
I like that, leads to deeds. All right, my friend. And are you teaching this? I didn't ask you that either. Are you teaching this to people? Do you have a course or you have a boot camp or anything that you want to talk about?
Well, I haven't done boot camps in years. Things have changed so much. We used to do those, but we do have a couple of Facebook groups. So we have a Facebook coaching group that is a paid group. Then we have a free coaching group on Facebook as well. Again, I think they can get links to those at the 1000houses.com/sub2. And yes, we do offer a couple of products. We have an Ultimate Sub2 course that's available, and marketing as well. So yeah, we have a couple of different products.
Oh, all the strategies this applies, but I'm going to say this, especially in Sub2, don't do this without a pro behind you. If it's not William Tingle, get someone else, but you don't go into this arena not knowing what you're doing, because I think I think you'd be very ill-advised. You know, you need to know what you're doing in this subject. It's a great business plan. It's a strategy, but just like any great strategy, you gotta dot your I's and cross your T's, and make sure that you're not setting yourself up for problems. They're not that big a deal to deal with, but you just need to know. And learning by mistakes in this venue is not the way to go. You can learn in some venues by making mistakes, and they're not going to hurt you so bad. Other venues, you don't, some of those lessons could put you out of business permanently. You know what I mean? So you don't want to do that. So I think this is one of those topics. Here's another misnomer. Let's clear this up. People go, I say all the time, there aren't any real, there's nothing really, there is no real zero down or no money deal. There's deals and strategies where it's so tiny that it's not worth arguing about, but there's always some kind of cash outlay. People will go, well, no, sub-2s, you don't need any money to do sub-2s. And right off the bat, I say, if you find that one sub-2 that's in perfect condition, that someone just wants to hand you the deed that's in current, yeah, you're right. But most of them are behind, might need a little work, got it, so even sub-2s, more likely than not, are going to require a little bit of cash. So that's when you need to study things like go to 1000houses.com/grow or 1000houses.com/fund and figure out how you're going to find these little bit of amounts of money so that you can take a sub-2, but you still may need $10,000 to do what you need to do, catch up the payments or fix some broken windows or do something. You're still going to need a little bit of money. So check out our sponsors here, the commercials that run in this. I'm going to advise that we go to 1000houses.com/grow and find one way to come up with those little bits of money that you'll need to consummate some of these deals. Even though you're shooting for a nothing down deal or no money out of your pocket deal, sometimes sub-2s require some money, right?
Yes, sometimes depending on the deal, it can require a substantial, outlay of cash. And it really just depends on the deal. But it is pretty rare to find one where you absolutely need no money. It does happen. But even on the really nice houses that we take over, if the payments are current and the house doesn't need any work, a lot of times you're going to need someone to come in and, and mop the floors and vacuum and do some cleanup before your new buyer gets it. So, yeah.
Shampoo the carpet, mow the lawn, put in some landscaping. I mean, shoot, let's make it ready. Let's make it to where it's not going to be on the market forever, because houses that stay on the market, nothing good happens to a vacant house. I mean, I've never showed up and someone mowed the lawn and painted it. Well, I have showed up where they painted it, but they didn't paint it. They painted it with graffiti.
That's what I like to have students do, is actually break down what it costs them per day for a house to sit empty. And if you've got a nice house in a decent market, a $250,000 home, that's got a, $1,200 or $1,400 a month house payment, it's going to cost you some money every single day that house sits empty, whether it's 50 or 70 or 80 bucks a month or a day. There's a cost involved to vacancy, and you need to be aware of that.
Taxes, insurance,
Yep.
portion of the payment coming up next week, association dues if there are any, or, depending on condos or townhouses or whatever. So yeah. Well, my friend, it's been really nice talking to you. I really appreciate that you took the time. I want everyone to go to 1000houses.com/sub2. That's SUB and the number 2, and get your free copy of a real estate investor business plan, and also get a free booklet on how to negotiate your leads to deeds. And how can you argue with that? You're going to get some information for absolutely free. Over there, you'll be able to learn more about William Tingle and what he has to offer. You can learn about the free Facebook community that he's built, and you can also learn about the paid subscription Facebook community that he has. And believe me, these are things worth spending your money on if this is what you want to do. If this is a strategy you're thinking about, get a pro behind you, shortcut the learning curve. I said it over and over again, and I know you maybe get tired of hearing it, but you're either going to pay the street or you're going to pay for some solid information from some people that have done it before to help you avoid some problems. Either way, you're going to write a check. And it's a lot less anxiety to go in with someone holding your hand and explaining to you and giving you the benefit of their years and years and deals and deals and deals worth of experience. And you pick up some of their network and some of their paperwork and some of their, you know, you're going to have to go out and invent all this stuff from zero if you don't find someone to help you. And that person deserves to get paid for what they do, a fair fee. You know what I mean? So I think William Tingle falls right in that category. And you should check it out if you want to do Sub2s. Anything you want to add to the, let's say we're talking to some people that really want to quit that crappy job. They're a little bit afraid. They don't know exactly what to do. What's your advice?
Mitch, my advice would be absolutely real estate is a way to do it. Obviously, you don't need a tremendous amount of education. You've heard my story. Investigate real estate and determine exactly what niche you want to get involved in, whether it's flipping, whether it's rehabbing, whether you like to rebuild houses or just you want cash flow, whatever it is. Don't just jump in and get started. You know, I see so many people that, oh my gosh, I've got an appointment. I'm trying to close this deal. I need paperwork. I need contracts. What can I do? Make sure that you learn from somebody reputable. Make sure that the paperwork that you've got conforms to your state laws, and just know the technique, know how it works, what you can do, what you can't do. You know, I've always tended to be the kind of person that would rather ask for forgiveness than permission, but know when that's appropriate. You know, make sure your paperwork is right. You don't want to get into a problem later on. Just learn the technique, and then just don't be afraid to do it. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call a seller.
I mean, if you were going to sign up to play football, you wouldn't just walk on the field and say, here you are, they're going to be kicking this ball down the field. You're supposed to catch it and run down. There's going to be hours and hours and hours of practice and getting ready for this one moment to get in your first game. Real estate's no different. Don't just walk on the field. You're going to get your bones broken. You know what I mean? You don't want to go into any game without being prepared if you plan on winning. So there you go. All right, my friend, this is Mitch Stephen with the 1000houses.com podcast. I'd like to thank my sponsor, taxfreefuture.com. Please go check out the 37 little video vignettes at taxfreefuture.com. One of the great things about taxfreefuture.com is it has a flat annual fee of around $175. One of the reasons that people get into some of the tax deferred vehicles that they're in is because they're free to get into. What they fail to realize is how much it's going to cost every year and what they get charged every year and all the fees. Tax Free Future is not free to get into, but it will save you a fortune in the long run. And it's not that expensive to get into to have that peace of mind going forward. So taxfreefuture.com, please go there and learn about self-directed IRAs, 401ks, SEPs, whatever. Got a brilliant lawyer behind it, Tim Berry, 2 decades plus, and that's what he specializes in is retirement and tax-free and tax-deferred programs. And the man is a wealth of knowledge, and he's about figuring out what we can do, not just telling you what you can't do. So please go to taxfreefuture.com. This is Mitch Stephen. We're out of here. Thank you very much, Mr. Tingle.
Well, thank you for having me, Mitch.
Bye now.